Hello, and welcome to All About Neurons. Just to be clear, this isn't actually everything known about neurons. That's way too much information to fit into our time constraint, so we'll just be covering the basics. To begin, what are neurons? Well, neurons are nerve cells that send and or receive messages all throughout the body. You can't really see my hands, but I'm bringing emotions. They're contained in the central nervous system, also known as the CNS, and the peripheral nervous system, the PNS. The CNS consists of the brain and the spinal cord, whereas the PNS exists outside of it, hence peripheral, like peripheral vision, outside of central. To better understand how a neuron functions, let's break down their basic structure. Here we have a diagram of a multipolar neuron. If you don't know what that means yet, don't worry, you will soon. And of course, the image is going to contain every detail, but it's the ones that we'll be covering today. Starting off with the soma. This is also known as the cell body. It's the primary section of the neuron in which the dendrites branch off. Inside exists the nucleus and most of the protein synthesis. This is the axon. It's a cable-like extension from the soma, though it's far longer. It sends nerve signals from the cell, joining the soma at something known as the axon hillock. Said axon hillock is right here. It's a specialized part of the soma, right where it connects to the axon. I'm going to be honest, this one took me a bit to understand, but this metaphor helped me best. It's said to be like a manager or an administrator. It checks for and then adds up the total number of signals that it is currently receiving, both inhibitory and excitatory. If that total exceeds something known as the limiting threshold, then its action potential is triggered. At this point, the signal is generated and it is able to pass through the axon. Yes, I am reading off a script. Don't hate me. Axon terminals. This is the last axon part we'll talk about for a while now, I swear. It's at the end of a neuron and they're responsible for sending signals to other neurons. At the very end of these, there's a gap known as the synapse. Here's that synapse now. It's a small gap at the end of the neuron, allowing signals to pass from one neuron to the next. Next up, dendrites. These are the parts of a neuron that branch out and actually receive messages. They may be referred to with terms such as dendritic trees. Okay, back to the axon for a moment. I'm sorry, I know what I said. I lied. But this is only to discuss the material surrounding them. The axon is surrounded by the myelin sheath. This is, well, a sheath of protective fatty tissue. It insulates the nerve cells from damage and from each other to stop their electrical impulses from interfering. It also helps speed up nerve conduction. If you're familiar with MS or multiple sclerosis, then you have an idea of what can happen if the myelin sheath is damaged. These little guys are known as Schwann cells. They're a type of glial cell, and they actually make up the myelin sheath. However, they also surround cells in general, keeping them alive and healthy. Okay, last up, the nodes of Ranvier. See these little tiny gaps between the myelin sheath we just talked about? These are important. The myelin sheath still insulates well, but these microscopic, and I mean seriously microscopic gaps, increase the speed of the nerve's electrical impulse. They let the axon have more direct contact and allow for ions to diffuse in and out of the neuron. Great, now that we've covered that, we can move on. There are 3 different types of neurons that are important to know, as well as 4 different categories of neurons. I know that might sound complicated, but bear with me. Let's start with the types. Sensory, motor, and interneurons. Sensory neurons, aka afferent neurons, carry signals towards the CNS. They supply information from the outside environment and can help regulate the nervous system functions. They're also responsible for spontaneous actions, such as pulling your hand away from a hot surface. They can actually do this without having to send that signal all the way to your brain, which can spare you those precious seconds between like a first or second degree burn. It's pretty cool. Next is motor neurons. Also called efferent neurons, these carry signals away from the CNS where they originated and towards various parts of the body. They allow for voluntary and involuntary movements. I have Tourette's. I would know about the involuntary ones. Lastly, we have interneurons. They send information between the sensory and motor neurons. They are exclusively found in the CNS, which again, if you forgot, is the central nervous system. Alright, next on to the categories, which is our final section for the day. Or night. It is nighttime for me. Hi. There are 4 basic classifications of neurons. In descending order of abundance, they are multipolar, bipolar, unipolar, which aren't actually present in humans, and pseudo-unipolar. That took me like 10 tries. Multipolar neurons have a single axon and many dendrites, which lets them process a lot of information from other surrounding neurons all at once. Most motor neurons are multipolar, and they are the most common type of neuron in the body. Remember interneurons? Those are multipolar too. Next are bipolar neurons. They have two extensions from the soma, one axon and one dendrite going towards opposite poles, hence the bipolar, two poles. Most of these are sensory neurons. They can range from touch, taste, smell, and even your sense of balance. A specific example of this includes the retina cell, in your eye. Unipolar neurons. I mean, what more can I say? No, but really. They have one axon that extends from a dendrite, but they really only appear in vertebrates, so I won't go into too much detail. Okay, pseudo-unipolar neurons last. These actually kind of confused me as well at first. I'm gonna be honest. They're sensory neurons with one axon protruding from the soma, and it splits into two branches of sorts. They have no dendrites, and instead, the axon serves both functions. One branch extends towards the PNS, and the other extends towards the CNS. They are sensory neurons, and they detect a wide range of stimuli. One example of these includes the dorsal root ganglion, which is this cluster of neurons right here. It is in the spine. And okay, that is everything I planned on discussing today. As always, the resources I used will be linked in the description below. Thank you for watching. Bye.